The camera's in your hand and you're gonna take a picture. What you're about to do might not be photography. Well, it is, but it isn't. I reckon the hobby that you signed up for might not be photography at all. If you love taking pictures or you're stuck in a rut and you don't want to take pictures today, I think this video might help explain why. Photography is capturing an image on a light-sensitive substrate. The act of taking a photograph has no intrinsic value in itself. I could take some pictures of absolutely nothing and it wouldn't excite me. Have you ever taken a picture without any motivation? That's mere photography. Button pushing. We should expect more out of it. That's not to say the act of photography isn't interesting. There are plenty of aspects of photography that people enjoy without having a subject in front of the camera. There's a certain joy to developing film, making prints. There's a romance to the darkroom that could beat whatever's happening in the frame. But this is a case of photography for the sake of photography. You've seen gear reviewers taking pictures of brick walls. It's the same thing. There's also camera collecting, the fascination with gadgetry. I'm fascinated by these old mechanical cameras, partly because of the nostalgia and partly the appreciation of something that was built to outlast us. I should mention at this point that my camera collection hobby isn't an addiction. I can stop any time I want. It's a cliche to say that the camera's the tool, but what if we got it wrong, thinking too narrow? What if it's photography that's the tool? The camera isn't the stand mixer. Photography is the stand mixer, and the camera's the on switch. Regardless, it's the cake that I'm interested in. Mere photography, like mere baking, can be fun, but if you don't like eating cake, then it won't be fun for long. If you're someone who likes going out into the wilderness, the shutter button will only bring you joy when you're standing in front of a vista you've been waiting for months to go out and see. Those of you with an appreciation for geometry might enjoy the challenge of composition using architectural elements in your town. I'll go out on a limb and say you'd probably enjoy those things even if you didn't have a camera in your hand. The camera allows you to remember a point in space where you once occupied, or a feeling or an event, but you'd have experienced those things even if you weren't holding a camera. I think we might confuse activities we enjoy and photography because we're doing them at the same time. Go look at your favourite photographer's portfolio. Every image is either something a photographer's really interested in or what they're being paid to produce. Take a second to think of the artist not as a photographer, but as someone who enjoys an idea or activity so much that they want to share it with you. Take their portfolios quite literally, even if it's a commercial one. Their enjoyment is of the subject of the image, not just the making of it. No one shows pictures that they hated making. The enjoyment is of the subject of the image, not the process of making it. It might be a sport you admire, a place that you love, or some artistic exercise that triggers your curiosity. It's difficult or even impossible to take a good photograph without having a passion there first. Photography gives you a reason to explore your passion, and it gives you access to your interests that you might not have without the camera, and a deeper appreciation of the subject that you otherwise might not achieve. The camera amplifies the interest you already have in a subject and allows you to share it with other people. It's an excuse to dig deeper into your passion. It's a reason to spend a little bit longer with the wildlife that you're interested in, or to go down a back alley without a destination. It's a reason to talk to someone you otherwise wouldn't have the excuse to talk to. Most times that I take pictures of people, they ask me why I take portraits. Here's the answer. I started to take portraits as a way to explore the city I was living in, meeting people I wouldn't have otherwise had the chance to meet. Over time, the process matured. A portrait is an excuse for a conversation. I like to find out what motivates people, where they've come from and where they'd like to be, how they've succeeded and how they've wrestled, and who they want to become. It's therapy, it's understanding, it's education. I'm looking for the meaning of life, and I think I'll find it if I take enough pictures. If you took the camera away from me during a portrait session, I'd be left with a conversation and some beautiful lighting. That's what a portrait is. It's understanding the reason for a person, and everyone is here for a reason. Lighting sets a physical mood for the emotional event, and that last 1% is the camera. It's only there to prove the conversation happened. At the end of a session, people will often compliment my skills and say they've had a blast and say they'll refer me to their friends, even if they've not seen a picture that I've taken. That says it all right there. The experience trumps the images, and ironically, that's how I know that the images will be great too. If indeed the camera is not the most important part of photography, how do we keep it out of the way? Here are a few tips on how we can tame it. Number 1, simplify all settings. The less we faff with buttons, the more we interact with the subjects. Violinists practice their scales and learn new ones, but they let them fall to their subconscious for the performance. Know your gear so well with a predictable setup, and you can concentrate on more important things. Number 2, don't hide behind your camera. I have a friend who spends an hour talking to someone before they even pick the camera up. It gets everyone comfortable, and at the very least, I try and pause every 20 shots or so to step in front of the lens. It breaks the wall, and it reminds the subject that the human element is more important than the mechanical. Thirdly, when I'm using vintage cameras, they can become a distraction and become a talking point in themselves, especially if the sitter has a memory or an experience with cameras like that. It's a good opportunity to turn those conversations to be about the experiences rather than the object. It usually triggers a memory of a family member or a dear friend, and those are great things to talk about. People really don't care if you're using a Pen F or a Pentax, but they will care if they remember their parents using one. Number 4, don't read how-to photography books, because the things you need to know about photography are not in them. This makes more sense now we've discussed it isn't photography that we're interested in. Graphic design, art history, and retrospectives are all far more useful than the books that tell you what shutter speed to use. Great photographers don't talk much about photography in their books. The most interesting photographers discuss their experiences and what they've achieved. They don't often talk about the mechanical aspects of photography. Photography is something that you apply to things that you're interested in anyway. If your camera ceased to exist, would you still go to the car show, or to the national park, or talk to artists? If in the middle of a shoot and your camera evaporated, would you still be excited to be there? Would you still have integrity? Would you do it again? So I'm toying with this idea that it's not photography that we're enjoying. We're using it as an excuse to interact with the world in a very deliberate way, and that's why we love it.